It starts with something small. You're young, maybe 8, maybe 12. Someone asks you for something, your time, your help, your silence, and without thinking you say yes, not because you want to, but because somewhere deep in your nervous system, you've learned that your worth is measured by how little you ask for and how much you give. This is how a people pleaser is born, not through a single moment, but through 1,000 small erasures. 1,000 times your needs came second. 1,000 times you watched someone's face fall and decided your discomfort was the easier thing to swallow. And the world praised you for it. You're so easygoing. You're so helpful. You're so kind. But no one stopped to ask, at what cost? This is the invisible suffering of those who cannot say no. And if you've found yourself here at 2 a.m., avoiding sleep like it's another obligation you can't quite face, you already know something is wrong. Something has been wrong for a very long time. And today we're going deep into the psychology of why you disappeared, why you became the yes when you wanted to scream no, and why that pattern, the one that maybe once kept you safe, loved, connected, is now slowly hollowing you out from the inside. Let's start with what's really happening beneath the surface. There's a concept in psychology, Jungian theory, about the persona and the shadow. The persona is the mask, the carefully constructed version of yourself that shows up to be accepted. It's the face you wear when you need to belong, the part that laughs at jokes that aren't funny, agrees with opinions that make your skin crawl, absorbs disrespect without flinching because what else can you do? Make it awkward, cause a scene, risk being seen as difficult. So you smile, you nod, you swallow it, and you go home, and you lie there in the dark, replaying it all. Every moment you should have defended yourself, every boundary you failed to set, every insult you absorbed like it was your job. Your mind writes essays you'll never send, scripts confrontations that will never happen, fantasizes about a version of yourself that doesn't crumble under the weight of other people's needs. That's your shadow, trying desperately to protect you, screaming through the resentment, stop, please, stop sacrificing yourself for people who would never do the same for you. But you can't stop because your entire identity, the very foundation of how you understand yourself, is built on being accommodating, easy, the person who never causes problems, and that identity is so fragile, so precariously balanced that saying no feels like it would shatter everything. So you keep performing the reliable friend, the helpful coworker, the family member who always shows up even when no one shows up for you. This is what psychologists call maladaptive people pleasing. It's not kindness, it's a survival pattern, and it doesn't start because you're weak. It starts because at some point, probably early, you learned that your acceptance was conditional, that love had to be earned, that your needs were somehow more burdensome than everyone else's. Maybe you grew up in a home where asking for things caused tension. Maybe you watched a parent's mood shift when you expressed a preference. Maybe you were just sensitive, highly attuned to others' emotions, and your nervous system learned that managing their feelings was safer than honoring your own. Whatever the origin, the pattern takes root, and it grows, and before you know it, you're 25, 30, 35, and you've spent so long prioritizing everyone else that you've forgotten what you actually want, what you actually need, who you'd actually be if you weren't so busy being whatever the room required. Let me paint you a picture. You're at a social gathering, maybe a party, maybe a family dinner. Someone makes a joke at your expense, not cruel exactly, just pointed enough that it stings. Everyone laughs, including you, because calling it out would make things weird, uncomfortable, would make you the problem. So you perform agreeability. You make yourself small, harmless, likable in that shallow way. People like things that don't challenge them. And it works. People tolerate you, maybe even enjoy your company in that passive way. People enjoy things that require nothing from them. Then a you go home, and the resentment crashes over you like a wave. You replay every moment, every slight you accepted, every time you should have spoken up but didn't. Your brain spins elaborate fantasies about what you could have said, should have said. You imagine versions of yourself that don't take disrespect lying down. And you lie there drowning in imaginary confrontations, promising yourself you'll do better next time. But next time comes, and you do it again. Because the fear is stronger than the anger. The fear of being too much, too difficult, too honest. The fear that if you stop performing agreeability, people will see the truth, that you're not actually worth keeping around. Here's what no one tells you about people-pleasing. It's not about generosity, it's about control. You're trying to control how people perceive you, manage their emotions, ensure they don't reject you, don't abandon you, don't confirm that terrible lurking fear that without the constant performance, you're not enough. You're not buying connection with your Yaz's, you're buying insurance against rejection, and the premiums keep rising. The tragedy is this: people can sense it, not consciously maybe, but on some instinctual level, they know you won't push back, won't set boundaries, won't defend yourself. And not because they're monsters, but because humans naturally take the path of least resistance. If someone is offering free emotional labor, free help, free accommodation of their needs, why wouldn't they accept? You're not a victim of manipulation. You're teaching people how to treat you. And the lesson you're teaching is, I don't matter as much as you do. What's happening neurologically is that you've developed what researchers call an external locus of self-worth. Your value doesn't come from within. It comes from whether others approve of you, from whether you've successfully managed their emotions, met their needs, made their lives easier. Your entire sense of self is built on a foundation outside yourself, which means you are never safe, never enough, because the ground is always shifting and you're always performing, always auditioning for acceptance you've already earned just by existing, but don't believe you deserve. This is the grief people pleasers carry, the grief of a self that was never allowed to fully exist. Because when you can't say no to small things, covering shifts you don't have energy for, attending events that drain you, accepting treatment you don't deserve, you won't be able to say no to big things. That same fear of conflict, that same desperate need to be liked, that same inability to tolerate disappointing someone. It scales, and before you know it, you've built a life that doesn't feel like yours. A life that happened to you rather than one you chose. You think your people-pleasing is contained, that it's just about being nice, avoiding conflict, keeping the peace. But the pattern runs deeper. It shapes your relationships. You attract people who take more than they give because that's the dynamic you've normalized. It shapes your career. You do extra work, accept less credit, stay in positions that undervalue you because advocating for yourself feels like violence. It shapes your nervous system. You live in a constant state of low-level anxiety, always scanning for disapproval, always calculating how to make yourself more acceptable. This is not living. This is just existing at the mercy of everyone else's needs. Professor Jordan Peterson has spoken extensively about this, about the necessity of integrating what Jung called the shadow, that aggressive, self-protective, boundaried part of yourself that you've learned to suppress. You've been taught that rejecting that part makes you good, that suppressing your anger, your needs, your capacity to say no somehow makes you moral. You've confused harmlessness with virtue, but here's the devastating truth. You're not harmless because you're good. You're harmless because you're incapable of anything else. And there's a profound difference. A moral person has the capacity for aggression, for setting boundaries, for saying no, for defending themselves, and chooses when and how to use it. You're just unarmed, and you've convinced yourself that being unarmed makes you peaceful. It doesn't. It makes you prey. The most terrifying part isn't what this does to your relationships. It's what it does to your character, to your soul. Because when you live your entire life unable to set boundaries, unable to honor your own needs, unable to tolerate the discomfort of someone being disappointed in you, you don't develop a self, you develop a vacancy, a space people occupy, not a person they respect. And deep down, you know this. That's why the resentment builds. That's why you lie awake at night, mentally replaying interactions from years ago. That's why you're here, watching this. Because some part of you recognizes that you've been living in betrayal. Not of others, of yourself. People don't respect doormats. They use them, and then they move on. And you're left there, covered in footprints, wondering why you feel so invisible. Why your kindness never seems to be returned. Why you give and give and give, and yet somehow always feel empty. But here's what you need to understand, and I need you to really hear this. You're not too kind for this world. You're too scared to exist in it as yourself, because kindness requires choice. Real kindness, true generosity. It only means something when you could have said no, but chose to say yes. When you can't say no, when every yes is driven by fear rather than genuine desire to help. That's not kindness. That's compulsion. That's your nervous system trying to keep you safe the only way it knows how. This is the moment where most people realize, I have teeth. I've just been too afraid to use them. You have needs, you have worth, you have the right to take up space, to have preferences, to disappoint people, to be imperfect and complicated and sometimes difficult. You have the right to say no, and not just the right, the responsibility. Because every time you say yes, when you mean no, you're not just hurting yourself, you're depriving the world of your truth. You're teaching others that your boundaries don't matter. You're participating in your own erasure. The brutal reality is this: no one is coming to save you from the cage you've built. No one is going to notice you're drowning and pull you out, because you've gotten so good at pretending you're fine, at making yourself easy, at minimizing your pain, that people believe you. They believe the mask. And why wouldn't they? You've perfected it. So what do? How do you begin to dismantle a pattern that's been decades in the making? You start by witnessing it, by acknowledging that what you've been calling kindness has actually been fear, by recognizing that the child who learned to make themselves small to stay safe is still in there, still running the show, and you turn toward that child, not with shame, not with judgment, but with compassion. You say, I see why you did this. You were trying to survive, to be loved, to belong, and it worked for a time. But you're safe now. You don't have to earn love anymore. You don't have to disappear to be accepted. This is the beginning of integration, of shadow work. It's not about becoming cruel or selfish. It's about becoming whole, about reclaiming the parts of yourself you amputated to fit into spaces that were too small for you. You practice saying no, even when it feels like violence, even when every cell in your body screams that you're being selfish, difficult, too much. You say it anyway, and you survive the discomfort. And slowly, excruciatingly slowly, you realize the world doesn't end when you have boundaries. People don't abandon you when you have needs. And if they do, they were never yours to begin with. You learn to tolerate disappointing people, to sit with the anxiety of someone being upset with you, to understand that their discomfort is not your responsibility to fix, that you cannot manage other people's emotions. You can only honor your own. You start asking yourself, what do I actually want? Not what would make me likable, not what would avoid conflict, but what do I, this person, this soul that's been buried under layers of performance, actually want? At first, you might not know. The signal has been jammed for so long, but you keep asking. And slowly, quietly, an answer emerges. And you honor it, even if it disappoints someone, even if it makes things awkward, even if it reveals that you've been lying to them and yourself about who you are and what you need. This is how you stop being a resource and start being a person. This is how you stop volunteering for your own exploitation. This is how you finally come home to yourself. It won't be easy. There will be moments you want to collapse back into the old pattern. Moments where saying no feels so unbearable, you'd rather just give in. There will be people who don't like this new version of you, who preferred you when you were accommodating and easy and never asked for anything. Let them go. They didn't love you, they loved what you did for them. Real connection, the kind that nourishes rather than depletes, requires two whole people, not one person and one vacancy. Not one person and one eternal yes. Two people with boundaries, needs, preferences, and the courage to be honest about them. You're not broken, but you are tired. Tired of performing, tired of disappearing, tired of lying awake, replaying all the moments you betrayed yourself to keep someone else comfortable. So stop. Just stop. You don't have to earn your existence. You don't have to make yourself easy to be worthy of love. You don't have to manage everyone else's emotions to deserve peace. You just have to exist fully, honestly, with all your needs and boundaries and complications intact. That's not selfishness. That's just being human. And maybe, for the first time, you can finally let yourself take up the space you've always deserved. Not because you earned it, but because you are always entitled to it. And the child in you, the one who learned to make themselves small, they can finally breathe